Oh, that is the light. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to Getting the Skinny on ABC Skin Health. I'm glad to have everybody here today. My name is Christine Gemperle, and I'm on the board of directors, but I also serve on the nutrition committee and help guide where we go with our nutrition studies with Swati and George Oskarian, Kurt Wanahan, Christopher Ade, and Maggie Moon. I'm also an almond grower, so I'm really learning a lot as I go through this journey with nutrition, where my almonds go and where they are, where and who they benefit the most. Okay, so let's see. This? All right. California almonds are a world-class product and therefore deserve world-class expertise. And so we work with some of the best nutrition research and marketing experts on the globe. We are very grateful to have Dr. Sivamani, Dr. Lee, and Luanne Williams, who will be here virtually with us, joining us today to talk about almonds and skin health. And so right here I have Dr. Xiaoping Lee and Dr. Raja Sivamani, and we'll see in just a bit Luanne Williams on the screen. There she is. Oh, there you are. Hello. Hi, Luanne. Can you hear us?
Yep, I hear you.
Okay, great. All right. Our almond industry stakeholders are always excited about the potential in the area of almonds in the area of skin health. As we dive into this arena of feeding our skin, we are learning that almonds are giving the phrase skin deep a whole new meaning. To date, the NRC has funded a handful of studies, and today we get to see the results of some of those. And with that, I would like to invite our first speaker, Dr. Raja Sivamani, up to the podium to show us what he has learned. So Dr. Raja Sivamani is a board-certified dermatologist and an associate adjunct professor at the University of California, Davis. If you attended the State of the Industry on Tuesday afternoon, then you might already be familiar with his work. He's a native of the San Francisco Bay Area, and his expertise centers on general dermatology, including medical, surgical, and cosmetic services. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. I always find it fun to finally meet in person. I have to put my pants on, so do all of you. So that's always fun. So I want to just give an overview of what we've learned over the past several years. Whether there was a pandemic or not, we still were doing research, and there's still more research coming down the pipeline. So, and we are able to keep our practice open because we're essential, and that made all the almond research essential too, just because we were still open. So let me start by, I don't need to really belabor why almonds, but I think what's really interesting about almonds is they have several nutritional factors that I think are very attractive when you think about the skin. The one that really jumps out to everybody is the alpha tocopherols, because we always look at vitamin E and antioxidants as potentially being beneficial. But there are other factors in here like niacin and niacinamide. But niacin is another factor that can sometimes help with evening skin pigment. We think about that from an external perspective. I'll show you some really interesting data as we go along. But let me start by just giving you an overview of the two studies that we did. And the first one is a pilot study that kind of kicked everything off for us. And in this study, it was a 16-week study, and we basically had postmenopausal women that were either supplemented with raw almonds that was about 20% of their total daily energy, or they went into a control group, and you can see that the control group was just, it was calorie matched, but it didn't have any nuts in there. And what we did was we just analyzed them every 4 weeks, and we took a look at where they were with the measure of wrinkles and also facial features. Now, one of the things that we did, and this is just the enrollment allocation table here, just so that you can see kind of how people flowed through the study. One of the really interesting things about the study is that, first and foremost, it was postmenopausal women. The reason we chose postmenopausal women, and I think this is really important, I just want to take a step back. I don't want to just present data. I want to talk to you about the art of clinical research, because there's an art that goes into how you do research. We could have chosen any population, but, and this is important when you're thinking about studies or when you're looking at studies too, you want to think about how the study was designed. And the reason we picked postmenopausal women, and I'm pointing out here that there wasn't any difference between the almond group and the control group, is that you also want to try to find, in a pilot study, those groups where you can get the best chance of actually seeing a difference. And the postmenopausal women, that is the time in life when they're going to accelerate on facial aging, and also it was skin type, Fitzpatrick skin types 1 and 2 and 3, so they also have the most cumulative sun damage, so then they have the highest acceleration of seeing a difference. We could have done the study in any population, but if you have to do it with limited funding, then you want to pick your population carefully. And I think the point that I'm trying to make here is we could have designed the study any which sort of way, but we tried to be really reasonable about picking a population that would really care, but also would have implications outside of just looking at that population. So what we did was we used these high-resolution cameras, which are totally amazing. They triangulate the face. They have 3 cameras, and you can put a face in there, and they take images. They look at every shadow that's on the face. And gone are those days where we say, oh, we're going to do clinical grading, because anytime you do clinical grading, you have to hit stop points that are about 20%. So what you do is you lose the ability to see anything that's a little bit earlier changes that are there. And now that we have technology, and I was an engineer before I went to medical school, I will tell you this technology that's out there is just so fascinating. So you can actually see micro changes, and when people come in for a follow-up photo, they actually have a ghosted image of their face. So we actually ghost the outline so it's identical match when they come back in. So you really can track these things. And so what we did was we tracked 2 measures here. One was wrinkle severity, which is a measure of the depth and the length, and then wrinkle width. And you can see here that at 8 weeks, and this is changed from baseline, at 8 weeks you really didn't see much of a shift, but when you got out to 16 weeks, you're seeing a shift of about 9 to 10% in both the wrinkle severity and in the width in the almond group, but not so in the control group. And I, again, want to highlight the point that this would not have been captured if we just did clinical grading, because for clinical grading, you need to see a 20% stop point. But because it's 9 or 10%, if you use high-resolution imaging capabilities and take advantage of the fact that we now have awesome technology, you can see these sorts of changes. We also asked a question, did it change how the skin barrier was functioning? That wasn't how it was working. We didn't see any shift between the two. And we didn't see any big change in the oil production. One of the concerns, of course, when you start eating a lot more nuts is that are you going to upregulate the oil production? That's not necessarily a bad thing, because then you're probably deploying more vitamin E. It turns out oily people age slower. We know this in Ayurvedic medicine, and we've actually done these studies even in the Western format. However, we didn't see a shift here. And so here's what the images look like. And so you can see here that really puts the person in a pretty standardized way that you can look at the images. And not only that, you also have calibrated colors, so you can make sure that if you're also tracking things like redness and pigment, you can do that. But they're very nice high-resolution images. And we didn't have any side effects. Turns out eating almonds didn't have side effects in this particular case. So overall in the pilot study, what we found was that wrinkles were improved in the almond supplementation group. And it wasn't due to any sort of shift in the skin barrier, wasn't a shift in the sebum production. So, you know, from our standpoint, we were thinking maybe it was deploying more alpha tocopherol. It could have been through other measures, but that being said, we did see our wrinkles improve. So then we decided, let's do a follow-up expanded study to really see, okay, what about if we took this out to a longer duration? And then I wanted to start asking questions. Let's start looking at redness and pigment and see if any of that stuff changes as well. And so very similar design, except now you'll notice it goes out to 24 weeks, and we just had people come back in every 8 weeks instead. But again, we had people that were randomized and split into almond or a control-matched nut-free calorie snack. And in this particular case, again, it was 20%, just a handful of almonds, very easy. We didn't have any of our participants complain that this was too much for them. They actually, and many of them just enjoyed being in the study. I want to also point out no one gained weight. Everybody maintained the same weight throughout the study. We didn't prime people to eat a better diet either. Now, if they did, that was on them, but we told them maintain your regular diet, just add these almonds in to whatever you were doing. The way we're presenting this is slightly different, but again, it's a relative change in wrinkles from baseline. And here, 1 represents, let's see if I can get a pointer on here. 1 represents the baseline. So anything that's decreased from 1 means it's an improvement. If it goes above 1, then it's a worsening. You can see here again, by week 16, similar to our pilot study, you can see that there's an improvement in the wrinkles. But in this particular case, we had about a 14% improvement, and that maintained out at week 24. So we saw that we got an improvement, and we had a maintenance of the improvement. Sometimes when you do these clinical studies, what can happen is you can get an improvement, and it can shift off. But as people continue in this study, they still had an improvement in their wrinkle severity, which again is a measure of their depth and length. But what was really interesting is we also looked at the average pigment intensity. And we know that at this stage of life, you also get uneven skin tone on the face. And one of the big concerns is, how do I try to even out the skin tone? And in fact, they got about a 14 to 15% improvement in their, well, this one was about 14, 15% improvement in their pigment intensity as well, which is quite interesting, because now it's not just about looking at wrinkles. You can also see that there's an evening of the skin tone from ingestion of the almonds, and the control group didn't have any shift either, and both were significant changes. We looked at skin hydration again in this group. It's a busy slide, but I think the point being here is that we didn't see any shift, neither in the almond supplementation group, and the 2 colors are for the cheek and the forehead, or in the control supplementation group. We saw that there were some hydration improvements over time, but nothing that was difference between the almond group or the control group. Now, what we also didn't notice was in the transepidermal water loss group, there wasn't much of a difference between the control group and the almond supplementation group either. So again, very similar results to what we had seen before. What was particularly interesting, though, and probably a good thing that we took this out to week 24 that we didn't capture at week 16, sometimes it's important to extend these studies out a little farther. You can see that in the almond supplementation group, there is not much of a shift. It wasn't significant in either the cheeks or the forehead. But in the control supplementation group, what you see is this climb in the sebum production that's happening over time. And in fact, if we look at the glycemic load that's coming in, the almonds didn't have as much of a glycemic load as the alternate control supplementation. And glycemic loads actually can shift your sebum control to go up. And I'm going to come back to this to tell you why we're really excited about some other studies that are coming right down the pipeline. So overall, we found that there was a significant reduction in the appearance of wrinkle severity. It was consistent with what we found in the pilot study. There was a significant reduction in the appearance of the pigment intensity. And then we found that the control supplementation increased the sebum excretion rate, but it wasn't so in the almond group. So then that leads to what's exciting and what's on the horizon. So I think I mentioned this in the video yesterday, but almonds aren't just about the almonds. It's the essence of the almonds. I'm an integrative dermatologist. I'm always thinking of what's the essence of what we all have. So, you know, the almond oil also has potential, and we're studying that right now for wrinkles and pigmentation. We're going head-to-head against what are the classic ingredients that are out there, retinol and also hydroquinone. So we'll have some of those results that are going to be coming up over the next year. I can't tell you how easy it is to recruit for that study. People are like, yeah, almond oil, yeah, I'm in. So there are so many people that are in for that one. And then acne. Acne is an area where diet, we now understand, plays a role. If you can blunt glycemic spikes, we know that that has potential, and it's already been shown in previous studies and also a recent study done in India that you can blunt the glycemic spikes. And so now we're doing a big study looking at acne, and literally the question we're asking is, if you incorporate almonds into your diet, does it make a difference for your acne? And, you know, we'll see what happens. We're really excited about that. So, you know, if we can get young folks to start thinking about almonds early and thinking about diet early, I think that's a win. I'm a real big proponent of changing health trajectories early in life. This is just the study that shows that almonds can reduce a glucose spike. So just by eating more and more almonds, you see a dose response where the glucose spike goes down. That's what gets us pretty excited. And oh, why that's important? Yeah, absolutely. So the reason this is important is anytime you have a glucose spike, it spikes your insulin pathway and the IGF-1 pathway, and both of those we know flare acne because I guess I won't be getting funding from them, but especially like dairy industry, like dairy, it's known to spike IGF-1 and insulin, and that we know worsens acne now. There's enough studies showing that. But not only that, high glycemic foods in general can also worsen acne. And so by incorporating almonds, we hope that you might be able to change the milieu. And we also know that almonds increase short-chain fatty acid production in the gut, and we look at the gut microbiome. We do a lot of high fidelity sequencing of the gut, and so we're also going to look at, does it shift that short-chain fatty acid milieu to see if that changes the anti-inflammatory status as well. And as with anything, we have so many folks that are very, very helpful. At UC Davis, and we have a private clinical center too, where we have a nutritionist, we have a naturopathic doctor, and we have medical students that are always coming in and helping. And so we're really excited about what the horizon is going to show for almonds. And I'm also very thankful to the Almond Board for helping support our research. And, more to come. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Lee.
I'm going to introduce her.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Sivamani. I think we found our next group to market to, high school kids and junior high kids, right? Okay, so now I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Xiaoping Lee. She is a professor of medicine and the chief of the Division of Clinical Nutrition at the University of California, Los Angeles, VA, or is that correct? Yes. She completed her MD and PhD in physiology at Beijing University. Her residency training was completed at UCLA VA Internal Medicine Program in 1996, where she also served as the chief medical resident. Dr. Lee has been a faculty member at UCLA and VA Greater Los Angeles Healthcare System since 1997. She is also board certified in internal medicine and a physician nutrition specialist. All right, take it away.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to thank my colleague first, and to take care of the skin of us, I'm postmenopausal women. But now I'm going to switch gear to talk about average folks like you all, young people. Okay? So first thing I want to say, and as you can hear, I've been at UCLA 31 years. When I first started practice, and it was so convenient to point our fingers at our parents saying, I did not get good genes. It's all their fault, right? And then we then heard about the whole human genome. It's all about us and about the DNA. But up to today, though, technology and science has allowed us to look at this very differently. Truly, we can blame our folks for is about the 30% who you are right now at the most. The other 70% who you are, how you're doing today, it is truly actually in your own hands. And that is the combination of nutrition and exercise. All right, so I put nutrition on the top because we actually have probably easier control and whole control when we pick up which bite I'm gonna take on what kind of food. Talking about exercise, that's a lot of effort. It's not always as easy as we can control. But this combination though, it is truly and who we are, metabolically, how we look, and how we function today. Of course, today I'm gonna, follow up with, skin health and how almond can really help us to achieve that goal. You already have heard all the diameters, and a dermatologist would judge how well your skin it is, currently. But I also want to talk about from an internal medicine doctor point of view, and that is the skin. It is now floating around. It's a part of you, it's a part of the body, and it's part of an organ. So skin is a truly reflection of your overall health. And it's looking at what are the impact factors, or we call it, things we kind of can have control on our skin health. Environmental factors, there is UV radiation, smoking, pollutions, harsh weather, and luckily we're in California, we don't have to worry much about that, but we have plenty stress, that including what the pandemic has brought us, and then lastly, it is a diet, and that actually is a major part of it. And so I want to say today is important when we're talking about skin, we think about what I'm going to put on my skin, how I'm going to wash my skin. Well, that's what dermatologists are making money out of all of us, right? And that comes in creams and oil and everything from vitamin A to E and also antioxidants and all of those. But what I truly wanted to really get to you all and why we're doing the study we did, it is because truly looking at beauty from inside. Consider skin as part of your overall body function and your overall health. This is how we designed the study. And we are in a very diverse part of the country, in particular in Los Angeles. So we have to have relative control with what kind of skin type and we're going to study for. And because this is the very first study, we try to eliminate variations among individuals. So we pick up a skin type in the middle, the 2, 3, and 4. This is the first study, so we start with that. And for that skin type, and mostly are Asian women, and the age is much younger, premenopausal, 18 to 15 years old. And we are comparing every day, taking a snack, 1.5 ounces of almonds versus about identical calorie of snack that is pretzels. We find at the checkout of our grocery stores. The entire duration is 12 weeks. So we did something very objective. It's not just look at how it looks like. We actually did a measurement, that is how resistant your skin is to UV light. We have a special lights. We know how much UV you're gonna get exposure, the quantity and duration. So the higher dose you need a UV light to produce the lightest redness, that's a sunburn, the high dose you need, meaning you have much higher antioxidants capacity endogenously. So it will be how healthier you are overall. So that is how we measured. We gave those individual UV lights to produce the lowest dose to get this little red mark. So that is how we measured objectively. Here are the people we studied. Even we are including people, up to age of 45. Here's the average age we actually end up having in the study, about 27 to 28 years old. Young people, and that is a group hard to see skin changes, as we have heard from our expert. And they're, mostly the skin type we talked about. It is Asian folks and distributed evenly among 2 groups. Control group is the pretzel and almond group. Here's what we see after 12 weeks. The folks consume almond, every day. They are much more resistant to UV lights, radiation or irritation to the skin. You can see there's no change with the pretzel group. That tells us pretzels and really is a good control. On the other hand, just have carbohydrate and as a snack, it really did not do you any good. On the other hand, almond, as you can see, really increase your overall endogenous antioxidants capacities. Even we are studying young people. Those are the people younger than 30 years old, particularly women. They have the estrogen on board as well. And we also measured the exposure time, and we see the exactly same result. Almond would take a longer time for the UV to produce the redness. And it's basically showing the same thing. The internal antioxidants capacity is being increased. So now we try to see, okay, what are the mechanisms? And we have heard about all the ingredients specially contained in almond. I do want to make a comment. And almonds is not just having vitamin E. And one of the important factors is that the vitamin E you buy from the store, the alpha tocopherol synthetic, actually turn out to be the weakest vitamin E. If you're taking that, you actually competitively inhibited the natural vitamin E's to have as a function. That is the reason you don't hear a whole lot about supplement vitamin E from your doctors. And in the contrary, actually almond have a special kind of vitamin E, tocopherol. It's much more potent than the vitamin E capsules you buy from the stores. So that is one thing. Even you kind of on the face value, we're all talking about vitamin E. But if you're talking about the function, almond is much powerful to deliver that antioxidants. We also look at it with college student at Merced, with our collaborator there, if almond consumption have anything to do with your gut microbiota. The reason we need to look at that is because now we know, the small bowels is serve a function, we absorb all the nutrients for human cells. The large bowels have much larger capacity than small bowel, actually is where all the microbiota live. So what we eat now is not just matters what get into our human cells, but also matters how we used to call leftovers for the gut microbiota, because that would shape how they organize themselves. Why this is important? Because the microbiota and digest the food, we used to think we are not able to use their waste. They actually produce so many small molecules, is so powerful impact on not only our skin, our mood, our brain, and even heart function and everything else. And here is also the microbiota directly interface our gut cells and the endocrine cells there as well. For example, serotonin, we all know, really related to our mood. But do you know 80% of serotonin are made in the gut? The gut feeling is really have scientific base beyond it. So this is studied by looking at after consume almonds and how our microbiota change in the gut, clearly showing increased diversity. So talking about microbiome, it is not first thing comes in mind, what kind of bacteria I have? Do I need to take probiotics? No. Number one, criteria is how diverse they are. So they can process everything you put inside of you and also really functioning, interact with the body properly. And that is the most important thing, and that is what we have seen after consume almonds here. So to really summarize what I'm trying to really relay from what we learned from our study is that, really help the skin health. It is a mechanism from inside of you by increasing your endogenous and antioxidant capacities. And from there, we clearly know if the whole body have a high antioxidants capacity, you would also be protected from aging, that including memories and your physical performance, your cardiovascular risk. Because we all take, antioxidants for all those purposes. And most of the antioxidants are also anti-inflammatory. So this is the study, even we just measure the skin as a functional marker, but it truly reflects your entire body's health. And the second thing is, and I also want to say, it's never too early to take care of yourself. Start early, start today, and that is not just for your skin, but for you. So you want to not only live long, but you want to live well. So get to be a friend of almonds right now. I hope we have snacks going around. Thank you.
Wow, I so am impressed with your passion for the subject. And thank you. I feel like you taught me so much about vitamin E. I feel those little bottles we buy with the squishy pills to just be filled up with almonds now, right?
Actually, more than that, because those capsules is actually maybe more negative than positive.
All right. That's a plug for almonds. Okay. So moving on to our next. Oops, there's your take-home message.
Oh,
All right. Now I'm going to introduce to you Luanne Williams. She is a director of innovation at Innova Market Insights, provider of market research services, including the Innova database. With 20 years of experience in the food industry, Luanne is a trend expert and a frequent public speaker at events worldwide. She leads a team of analysts and works with global clients. And Luanne, are you ready?
I'm here. Do I need
Great.
to share my screen? I guess I do.
Yes. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Somebody's in there in the technical department. I need some help sharing my screen.
Yes.
It's
Do you want me to
disabled.
just hit the button for you?
I can see nothing. So all I see is
Okay.
a few people sitting on a stage and nothing else. So
Let me see if I can get to your slide. There you go. Okay, it's your first slide.
okay, I'm gonna open them up so I can follow along. Okay, so I get to put some context into what happens in the market when it comes to the absolutely fabulous science that we heard today. And I'm gonna also talk a little bit about some of the opportunities. So you can go to my next slide where it says evolving trends. So we track trends, we track new product launches, we do a lot of consumer research every year. And one of the things that we see through the trends over the past few years, you can see here that in 2020, we identified Eat Pretty as one of our trends. In 2021, that kind of merged into Tailored to Fit. The consumers are really looking for foods that fit into their lifestyles. And now what we've seen is it's really starting to evolve that food actually represents your values. It almost becomes a part of your personal brand. We know that people are not really on diets anymore. They're more on, maybe they're on a paleo lifestyle. Somebody at work told me this week that they had dinner for a few colleagues and it was a whole 30 approved dinner. So again, this whole idea of personal eating, looking for those benefits and so on, this is really starting to evolve. Some of the consumer data that you see on the right, almost half of the consumers in the 11 countries that we surveyed, you can see across the bottom, and includes countries from every region, say, I care about positive body type awareness on social media. So this whole idea about becoming real and showing real people and so on is gaining in popularity. And 17% of those consumers also said, I'm more conscious about my body in terms of my physical appearance. If we go to the next slide. So what happens is food companies do a lot of research and then they apply that. And then we can measure the claims, we can measure the ingredients and so on. And so we have a nice chart here that shows a graphic. We looked at a mood platform. So we just heard Dr. Lee talk about mood platforms and all the serotonin in your gut. There is absolutely enormous interest in the food industry in making that connection between what makes consumers feel good, this whole idea of mood health, and link it to food and to the ingredients. So on the x-axis, we have the annual growth in these platforms, and on the y-axis, we have the percent share of food and beverage launches of these platforms. So you can see they're established. Immune health is very established. It's growing very fast. Of course, this was amplified because of COVID. Energy is another very established platform. Replenishment, recharge. But what's coming up next is we're seeing this mind functional focus. Is again growing very fast, but from a smaller base. The size of the bubble is the number of product launches we've tracked with those claims. And you can see beauty there growing really fast. And also sleep is right below that. But this whole idea about eating to help improve your mood and so on is definitely very on trend. I'm amazed at how many companies are really engaged with that. But again, consumers are as well. And again, you can see in the top right there, 16% of consumers that we surveyed said in recent months that they had purchased products that improve their physical appearance or their beauty, their skin, their hairs, their nails. There is huge interest in this. And the types of products that are being made and that consumers are seeing are ones like you see in the bottom right. This is a product actually based on adaptogens, but it's almonds with a lot of extra adaptogenic ingredients in there. But again, really targeting those benefits that target mood, but also appearance and so on. We go to the next slide. A little bit more, diving into a little bit deeper here, but we see that 50% of consumers also tell us when it comes to my beauty and skin health, I prefer getting vitamins and minerals from natural foods over taking supplements. So again, there's huge interest in health. Again, every year we see health becoming a lot more holistic, again, also encompassing how you feel about your food. So I eat food that's good for me, but also food that makes me feel good. Again, there's lots of different layers to that. And then if we start looking at almonds, you see there that we see a 32% growth in food and beverage product launches that have beauty claims and contain almonds. So again, almonds are one of those hero ingredients. They bring so many different benefits. I've been working with the almond board for many, many years, and I've done lots of presentations on all types of benefits. So this one to me is a really exciting one because it's just so on trend. And again, I'm not going to read everything and all the claims in these products, but you'll see they're from all over the world, and you can see they all have a link to beauty and they all contain almonds. So it's really highlighting the vitamins and the minerals, also the oil that's also in almonds, but again, making that connection between all the goodness in almonds and these beauty enhancing ingredients. And we heard today that there's now what we think a very good scientific basis for some of these claims as well. You can go to the next slide. So again, we'll dive a little bit deeper into almonds. But first of all, what does healthy aging mean to you? So in the first instance, 20% of consumers say it's youthful appearance. How important is healthy aging to you? Well, there's your target market. 90% of consumers say it's really important. I think we all know we're getting older. We see family members, moms, grandparents, and so on becoming older and having those healthier years. But increasingly, you also want to feel or look as good as you feel. So everything around skin health, huge trend, beauty from within, really big trend. And you see that data reflected in some of the consumer data that you see here. The little figure there in the middle, we looked at food and beverage launches that were tracked with almonds. And then we looked at skin health claims within those products. So again, it's growing from a very tiny base, but you can see that there's an upward trajectory over the past 4 years, slight decline in the first half of this year, but we'll see what happens when we look at the data across the whole year. But this is something that we expect to grow. And again, I've been showing you product examples, and we will definitely see more of them. I like the one here from Japan because it's really focused on almond oil. So you can see they're making the connection between almond oil. It's made from squeezing the almonds. It contains oleic acid, has vitamin E, and been used for beauty and health since ancient times. So again, a lot of really interesting storytelling around the benefits in the almond oil there. We can go to the next slide. And I think this is, we just heard some interesting connections here also between, you can see that we see a connection for almonds also from skincare across to food. So this is a product from Beiersdorf from the very famous Nivea brand that contains natural almond oil as a moisturizer in the skin. And then you see over to the food. Again, this looks almost like something you would see in Sephora, a very fancy skincare type of product, but it's a granola that also contains toasted almonds. Almonds seem to go with everything, every flavor, every other type of ingredient. But again, also it contains ingredients like collagen that also benefit the skin. A little bit more consumer insights there in the middle. How worried are you about your skin aging? 50% of consumers. So in terms of a large market size, a universe to go after, there's a huge amount of people who are interested in this. So it's a very big target market of consumers. And then we also like to ask and try to figure out, when it comes to storytelling, what word should you use? Should you use vegan, vegetarian, or plant-based? Well, we know plant-based is very appealing to consumers, but also is this concept of healthy aging is also very appealing to consumers. And go to the next slide. If we look at some of the categories, we can see that these claims around beauty and almonds are really concentrated in the cereals and the snack categories. You can see that we saw a big increase in these claims in snacks over the past year. And again, just a few more examples here of the types of products that we're seeing. Again, there's a lot of innovation. Healthy snacking is really on trend. We've done, with the Almond Board, also a lot of research into this and presentations on it. Again, just massive interest in permissible indulgence. And looking for those extra claims is something that's really interesting to food manufacturers. So as there's more science behind aging and the benefits of almonds around this should also create a lot of opportunities for companies that are making snacks. So the last two slides are here. We can go to the next one, looking at some of those opportunities. So there's definitely an opportunity to leverage almonds' inherent skin health benefits. So we heard this today, that you can really look at the nutrient claims for nutrition claims around vitamin E, for example, the good fats. We also heard there might be a few more there around the different combination of ingredients that almonds have, but also with the health claims, and look for those benefits that consumers care about. So maintaining skin health, softening your skin, anti-aging, moisturizing your skin. If you haven't gone onto social media, onto TikTok or to Instagram, and just look at everything that's happening, the number of famous dermatologists telling consumers, and especially young women, what to do with their skin, what type of ingredients, what works, what doesn't work. My daughters can tell me about the molecule size of collagen, and should you put it on topically? Well, it doesn't really work because the molecules are too big. You should eat it. I mean, it's amazing the amount of consumer education that's going on through social media around these topics. So finding those benefits that are backed up scientifically is really important. And again, just some more examples of products that you see are making that link between almonds, highly nutritious, rich in healthy fats, and again, making that connection to the health benefits like hair and healthy cells, for example. And we go to the last slide. Again, looking at how can you continue to promote this another way. I mentioned that consumers really start to see food as part of their lifestyle brand, right? So this can be a big driver as well. Looking for personal values that are linked to food choices. A good example is the colleague that I mentioned, that she's known for kind of this whole food type of eating, and she's always eating snacks and eating carrots at her desk. But again, trying to link those values also to the ingredients. Almonds is a perfect one for that. And then again, look at some of the applications for almonds. Beauty from within. Beauty is a part of this whole idea of holistic health. You know, linking this gut-brain axis is really interesting for people. Well, you now need to eat foods that feed the bugs in your gut, we just heard. So there's lots of different ways to make the connection. And I think maybe just one more point. I love the product on the right. This is a new chilled snack bar from Nestle, which is really interesting. It's preservative free, so they had to put it in the fridge. But again, making these connections here between the balance of permissibility, it's really permissible, indulgent, as I said earlier. But around this whole idea of beauty, I love the little picture there of enjoy a perfect moment of being imperfect. And you can see the little imperfect almond there. That's actually, I think it goes along really well with beauty, that we don't want everyone to be perfect. We see a lot of imperfect models and more natural type of women. So I thought that was a really interesting little call out here on the product, because it also, when we talk about finding things that represents people's personal values, this is a absolutely fantastic method of storytelling that also helps to link to that. So that's all I have for today. I hope that gives you some ideas and inspiration for what's happening with all those fantastic almonds that you're growing, and new opportunities to create really exciting foods for consumers.
Thank you, Luanne. And please stay on the line for the Q&A section. But just, I would like to give Dr. Sivamani and Dr. Lee these almond mugs for your tea or coffee, whatever you prefer, in appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a great reminder every day.
Yeah. So, oh yeah, and Luanne, we'll be sending yours. We couldn't figure out how to get it through the screen. So, a big note of thanks to all our speakers at the presentation. I feel like we are just scratching the surface on discovering the role almonds will play in skin health and protection. And as a 50-year-old woman, yes, I will admit it, I am excited to learn how almonds in my diet can help me age both gracefully and naturally. So with that, we're going to take some questions now. So please raise your hand and you can come forward to the microphone.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for a great presentation and you got me excited about almonds again.
Is it on?
Yeah. So from a 50-year-old guy, I eat almonds, and now I can relate why no wrinkles. So. But I got a question for the group. I work in export markets where this messaging is very critical. This research is happening here. How do we take this research and we are able to use these health messages? Specifically, I'm using India as a market. How do we bridge that gap? Because when I see some of the messaging which was on the bags, it's subliminal messages. It is not direct messaging to the consumer. Pistachios is an example. They used protein as their message for the egg. They put in the newspaper there a front page. The whole page was just a big pistachio replacement of an egg. How can we take any of this messaging to our export markets and it'll be a game changer for us? So that's the question for the panel.
Yeah, the question is a little bit of a overlap between marketing and medical, and probably a bit more marketing than medical. So it becomes a little bit of a challenge for us to maybe direct how the marketing teams might want to discuss that. But I will tell you this, and many of you rely on, and many dermatologists will tell you that sunscreens are like very, very important for, say, preventing aging and whatnot. However, we know that most people don't get sunscreens on at nearly the concentration that they're supposed to be at. And I don't even want to blame the consumer because they took a bunch of dermatologists and said, okay, you do them. You put them on since you think everybody's putting them on incorrectly, and they put them on also half as thick because it's just no one puts on sunscreen. So you're never going to get SPF 30, never. You'll never get the label that's on the sunscreen. In fact, you'll probably get half. And if you're lucky, fourth. If you're doing spray sunscreens, it's like community sunscreen, right? You're spraying all your neighbors and everything. So, you're probably getting much less. So what becomes really important when you think about sun protection, which is probably the single most factor that causes aging in populations that are darker or lighter. In the lighter populations, it's wrinkles and collagen breakdown. But in the darker populations, like India, for example, or the Asian subpopulations, or Hispanic or whatever it is, it's going to be this mottled pigmentation that really makes you look aged and look older. And in those cases, you need to have internal approaches. You have to augment with antioxidants because we know that even if you put on sunscreens, and we did these studies, the sunscreens will still release some level of oxidative stressants locally as they absorb UV light, and you have to have a way of collecting that. And currently, what most people use is carotenoids. But I think Dr. Lee's research is very important because when you increase the minimal erythemal dose, which is technically SPF, by even 1%, if it's even 20% or 15%, that is in addition to your sunscreen now. So you've now augmented the sunscreen back towards where it probably should have been, but in a much more holistic way. So I don't know if that's the positioning with aging rather than the protein, but I would imagine that that's going to be a really important conversation point that I think the almond board should really think about. And I think food and nutraceuticals and supplements are really pushed, but if you can have a whole food that does this, I will tell you a lot of my patients would prefer to take a whole food rather than have to think about supplements because it's just easier for them to incorporate into their diet.
I would add, right now the consumers are very aware about food quality. From research point of view, we have moved on from just talking about calories and to macronutrients, now even beyond that, to really talking about the whole food. And that is a very important concept. And just, almonds, like a natural food, is not only have this individual ingredients you listed, but each one of them functioning alone is one thing. the whole package together is a magnitude of totally different. So natural whole food, dietary quality, food quality, it is one major concept. The second one is particularly from our study, it is also catching on the trend that consumers have to recognize. Since 1980s, in US at least, the dietary guideline is all about low-fat food. And what is low-fat? Carbohydrate is zero fat. And that have really brought us a lot of consequences, including obesity and diabetes. So the fact that we use a carbohydrate, pure carbohydrate, as a control is truly demonstrate if you do not want to have high carbohydrate, you do not want to process food, actually pretzels is a processed food. Almond, it is right there for your need as a snack, but meanwhile, gave you so much benefit. It is not just the skin, but overall health. I think when we're talking about almond, the more we talk about the Christmas gift. It's not just the content and the packaging and everything all together. I think that is a very important message and about almond. It's not about just one organ. It's not just about your insulin resistance, heart disease, and not just about your skin, your entire you. This is the key element of a healthy dietary pattern. And it's not processed, and it is what we are strive to have as much as possible in our diet. And talking about how to get a message across, and just my research, I guess, was translated or in social media back in China. And if you search my name in the Chinese media, it come up, me, Almond. That's my last name.
Luanne, I imagine you have something to say.
Oh, I do. It's all about storytelling. So, and if you can storytell with a lot of really excellent science behind you, you have a huge advantage. And the Almond Board does an absolutely fantastic job, not only of doing the research, but also of messaging and disseminating that research around the world. So you need to build a selling story for almonds. I would start with the resources that the Almond Board has available, because there is an enormous amount of resources available, but you can also take that and adapt it into a selling story that differentiates what you're selling to, if you know you're competing with pistachios or you're competing with Brazil nuts or whatever it is, just build a storytelling message around it. But again, you have a fantastic number of resources from the Almond Board, and then you need to get somebody to make it pretty for you. Make a few slides, make some infographics, and it really does make a big difference, because catching everybody's attention really quickly is important. I'm sure you can find influencers on social media that are talking about almonds and all these same type of topics that you heard today. There'll be dermatologists, maybe the other speakers are also on social media talking about these things, but finding some way to really excite your customers. And if you're exporting, whoever you're selling to your importers, you need to excite them as well, because they will need to sell it on. So you just need to find those key areas of differentiation for your product and build a nice message around it.
Great. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Well, I have a few. Okay, I think I'm going to start, I'm going to go back to you, Luanne. For quite some time, women were using surgical procedures, chemical methods, and topicals to treat their skin. And now we're looking more towards, the natural way of doing things, right? And through diet. So, is the concept of graceful aging catching on?
Yes. We did a project, it was with a big food company maybe 15 years ago, around healthy aging, and we were trying to think who could be like our spokesperson. And I think finally one person came up with Cher. But now if you were thinking about this 15 years later, there's so many fantastic examples. There was this whole thing of what actresses over the age of 40 never got roles. And now you look at people, Nicole Kidman are in our age range, she's over 50. Jennifer Aniston, over 50. There's all these fantastic examples of women who are aging really well, men as well. Think about Bruce Springsteen, think about Barack Obama. There's so many people that are aging well. So for sure, for sure. You know, 60 is the new 40 or something. So I think we see lots of examples of people aging really well. And of course, healthy diet is an important part of that. And for a lot of people, this invasive treatments are terrifying. So again, if you just look at what's happening around all the communication, education about all the other things you can do, for sure, I think graceful aging absolutely catching on, and also eating better as part of that is certainly very on trend as well.
Great, thank you. And then, Dr. Sivamani, I'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the studies that you have upcoming, particularly the almond oil study, and just give us a sneak peek.
Yeah, sure. I do want to make a comment, though. Any of these diets that we take or any nutrition that we do, it's not to replace the other approaches that we take. Because, many of these actors or actresses, they're still getting injectables, I can guarantee you. They're still getting peels. They're still getting laser therapies. We have an aesthetic clinic where we do integrative medicine, and we see people all the time, and we do these sort of resurfacing things. But people want to know beauty from within. But I don't think consumers want to look at that as a replacement to everything. What they want to do is just, how do I clean up my diet so that I augment what I'm going to do? And so that's really what we're trying to do with this almond oil approach. With the almond oil study, we're comparing against two other ingredients. One is hydroquinone, which has a bit of controversy. There are other natural alternatives now. And we want to see, can almond oil be one of those natural alternatives that could potentially be a player? And then retinol. Retinol is very, very famous. We actually did one of the very first studies that was a retinol alternative, and we published that several years ago. And then it kind of opened up our eyes to the fact that, there are probably many natural alternatives to this. And a lot of people now, either because Ayurveda, this traditional form of medicine that comes out of India, has really gained a lot of popularity. A lot of people are focused on oils. How do I augment my skin with oils? How do I do something that's just going to just either for my whole body or my face? And so I think because of that, we're doing a head-to-head with retinol against almond oil. And again, we're picking people in the wrinkle study. It's going to be older folks that tend to develop wrinkles more quickly. But in the pigment study, it's going to be younger people that are going to be very diverse and probably have darker skin types. And kind of speaking to what Dr. Lee was doing, we understand that there are different populations that can benefit, and so we're trying to take a very diversified approach, literally, with how we do the studies.
Well, I love the approach. One, because using almond oil is so much cheaper than a lot of the products that you buy from your dermatologist or from your esthetician. So, actually, I've been using a little almond oil on my skin. Now I'm just wondering if I need to do an almond butter mask at nighttime. So, I don't know. I thought it might be an additional use. Okay, great. We have a question.
I actually wanted to ask a question about your future research too. Are you guys looking at consumption of almond oil as well? And then in the company where I work for, we get a lot of quality questions because I work in oil about like applications of oils for like consumption or on skin, and like educating people how to use them, because we get a lot of kickback regarding like it being like oily or it leaving like a layer on their skin that they find like unpleasant. So how are you guys integrating like kind of like customer complaints for using oils, whether it be like internal or external on the skin for your study? Are those things that you're considering?
So one of the things that we have to keep in mind is we are like a 5-star society, right? Everything is like 5 stars, but we treat everybody as if they're all the same. Like every skin type is exactly the same. Every oil type is the same. And I think that's where we've kind of missed the mark, is that everybody has a unique skin type. So if you have really oily skin, putting oil on your skin might not be the best way to go. So you have to really ask the question, are those the people that are complaining? Or is it people that have dry skin? Or is it people that might have combination skin on their face or have other qualities? So as we go along, I think we have to start parsing out, who is the one that's talking about it. Now, some of these have already come up, not just in almond oil, looking at things like, whether it's virgin, whether it's cold pressed, whether it's refined. And actually many of the original studies with many of these vegetable oils are fixed oils. I mean, is it a fixed oil or an essential oil? A lot of the general public doesn't even know the difference between an essential and a fixed oil. Almonds are fixed oils, so the allergenic potential is like very low compared to an essential oil where it's very high. And so sometimes people mix that. And then I'll see even on social media, people will go out there and say, you just dilute the essential oil in a fixed oil, and then, of course, but they're not talking about the allergenic potential. So I feel like there's some still education to be done around cold pressed, what it means to be virgin, what it means to be a fixed oil, and then how do you find a high quality oil at the end of the day is really what a lot of people want to know. We haven't looked at ingestion. In this particular case, we're just looking at topicals. I mean, we're open to anything as we go forward, though, of course.
I just wanted to add, and the individual skin, oily or not, it may not directly related to topical use or direct ingestion. It's actually one is individual phenotype, and that is who you are. The other one actually is more overall your metabolic state. So it is not as simple as, your oily skin, you must take in too much oil. The other point I want to make is that we hear a lot of talk about oil or fat is saturated or polyunsaturated. Actually, that is a very crude division. And for a lot of plants, oil, they're monounsaturated. And almond and other tree nuts and avocados are very good examples. And I think a monounsaturated fatty acid cannot be scientifically lumped together with a polyunsaturated fatty acid. So just talking about polyunsaturated fatty acid, it is not true as long as they are polyunsaturated, therefore they must be good for you. Actually, it's quite complex. If your first double bond start as the 3 position, that is the omega-3, particularly long chain, human being originally from the sea, from the ocean. The more, the better, the merrier. And they are the one actually responsible for stopped inflammation. On the other hand, same polyunsaturated fatty acid. If your first double bond is at the 6th position, number 6 carbon, it is called omega, well, if you say 6, and they are actually there for a purpose. They are increased inflammation. Not all the inflammation are bad. When you get an infection, you want an inflammation start, so you kind of start the war, kill the enemy. But you want an anti-inflammatory start, not long after that to stop the inflammation, stop the war, repair back to harmony. So the omega-6, omega-3 ratio has been really in a bad situation. Most of our Western diet is 30-1, meaning 30 parts of omega-6 to 1 part of omega-3. And that is the reason we have obesity and chronic disease, hypertension, diabetes, and metabolic disease, cardiometabolic. What we really want is going back to where human beings have been evolving. The ratio is about 5-1. And we have done a lot of studies ourselves. If you can do that, and your overall health will be much better place. So I think that there's a lot of messaging to the consumers. It is not just, okay, saturated fat are bad. Those are animal fat. Yeah, particularly if you have overall calorie excess. But with that have said, it is not true. All polyunsaturated fatty acids are great. So we have recommendations for our patient as well, depends on what they take the oil for. If you want to cook, stir fry tastes great, and you do not want to use olive oil because the temperature never going to be high enough to make the food that kind of quality. You may want to use a monounsaturated fatty acid like canola as a good combination, or avocados. If you want a cold dish, use olive oil, probably virgin or cold press. Those research are ongoing. So it's not a straightforward question. We can answer. Sorry about that. It may made you feel more confused, but that is, the truth. Monounsaturated, it is very much closer to omega-3 in the anti-inflammatory side of it. Not quite the same with omega-6, polyunsaturated.
Okay. You know what? I have a question for you, Dr. Lee. pertaining to your study. So for the benefit of our audience, please tell us why UVB rays are harmful, and at what point in our lives, oh wait, no, this is not the question I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask this question, sorry. We understand your study was conducted with women of Asian skin type. So what is typically known as Fitzpatrick 2 to 4. Do you expect the results to be different in types 1 and 2?
Okay, so I explained when I was doing the presentation is more for one narrow group with less between individual variations. With that have said, I would think almonds are equally beneficial to other skin types, probably more so than lighter skins, because you are more likely to be sensitive to UV lights damages. So even for people with darker skin, and is equally positive. And this has already been shown from all the metabolic studies. So there's no reason to think your skin as a part of you will not benefit from consume almond.
I have a quick question, actually, to the entire panel here. So we know that most of these studies have been done in women. Would you expect the results to be similar if they had been done in men? And if not, what are some of the benefits that we could look at when it comes to men and skin health? Thank you.
Well, the reason in our particular case that we chose women was because there's a hormonal shift that's clear and there's an acceleration. But there's no reason to think that this couldn't have a benefit in men. I mean, the study isn't there, so if we want to look at claims, we're limited to women there. But for our acne study, for example, we're not going to necessarily limit that. We're going to be looking across the board because there the science isn't looking at a hormonal shift necessarily, but the fact that acne exists. So, yeah, if men want to get, they want to get all almondy, let them. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But it's just, our studies need to expand to perhaps include them. And maybe you have to include, a higher, I would say, maybe a number of patients or participants. But, yeah, there's no reason to think that the human physiology is that different to see that it would be different. But, yeah.
Yeah, well, for us, it's more also a practical issue. I don't know what's wrong with you, man. You don't sign up for those kind of studies, and you give your loved ones, your women, to spend all the money to do all the facial care, but you.
Oh, they're using the facial care in the bathroom, though.
Yeah, that's my point. You took the word out of my mouth, but they don't come to your studies, and but the truth is, if we're looking at man. For metabolic disease, looking at cardiovascular mobility modality, you guys are way high up there. You would really want to be really strong, but that does not necessarily mean you don't take care of yourself. I just told one of my male patients Monday, I said, you take care of yourself is anywhere not near selfish. You need to be here for your wife, for your kids today, tomorrow, in 1 year, in 10 years, hopefully in 30 years. So that is something I think guys need more education than us, gals. And you not only need to grow almonds, you need to consume almonds, particularly replace those fast food you're catching because you're so busy, and so you can be there for us.
Actually, yes, that was very good. I do have one question. I just thought of while you were speaking, because of the skin protection that the consumption of almond gives us, and so we're preventing that damage, can we see going down the road like it as a preventative to skin cancers?
Yes, particularly the UVB we use is known to cause skin cancer. Particularly men are doing even less sunblock application than the women. And internal would really give you a lot more. Here's another benefit you don't think about. So when you put sunscreen, you actually give your skin less chance to make vitamin D. So, so the sunblock is not only the compliance issues, but it comes along with other potential health issues as well.
So I'd like to direct this question to Luanne, but if anybody else on the panel would like to answer, please feel free. I think one of the compounding, if you will, elements of even this discussion is that word and ideal of education. And so thoughts around what part of that education is actually education versus de-educating certain aspects that have been presented either through social media or non-scientific methods, but then also defending certain positions. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I think we should ban the word consumer education, and it should be conversations. I think it's super scary. I did a panel earlier this year with influencers because one of our trends was like age of the influencer, and we think we're maybe getting to the end of some of the extreme craziness in the food industry that we've seen over the past 10 years that really grew up around clean label. There's still a lot out there, but I do think it's starting to come back into balance. So I talked to the farm babe, the food science babe, and to another food industry friend named Rachel Cheatham. And one thing that was really clear to me is that the food industry has to stop this idea of thinking that we're going to educate consumers. We need to have a conversation with consumers. There's now the tools to do it. You have social media to do it. And there needs to be more engaging type of conversation. So if you're not following Farm Babe and Food Science Babe, I think it's a really interesting learning experience to see how they're addressing some of these, as you said, like the misinformation and so on. I think they address a lot of big topics. There's another really nice social media, I'd say influencer, Ag Bio World. You can find them on Facebook, but it's super interesting. And I think they're perfect models of it's science-based, it's not confrontational. And I think as more and more good education gets out there, or good information gets out there, yeah, at some point it will have some impact. I also think there needs to be a lot more farmers. I still think that in terms of storytelling, the first time I heard that there were lots of families that have 6 generations of almond farmers in the family. That's fantastic, and you hear these stories about, farmers do this, they abuse that, use too much water, the way they treat their animals and so on. Farmers can't do that. I also have a family full of farmers. You cannot be a farmer and work against yourself. And if you do those things, you are working against yourself. So I think there needs to be a lot more farmer stories out there that if you're not loving it and dedicated to it, it would be a very difficult profession to have because it is the hardest job just about in the world. So I think it's a combination of those things, and it's just going to take time. But as I said, I do think we're coming to the end of some of the extreme craziness. There's still a lot out there, but I do think that I think we've also had 2 years of master classes and what we should believe and scientific proof and so on. And I remain the eternal optimist that I think at some point it'll come back even better into balance.
Great, thank you so much. Well, we're going to be, do you have one question? Yeah. We'll take one last question and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, thank you. I represent the grower, and in listening to your evidence from your research, I was piqued with portion size and how to get that word across, and then also the delivery relative to salts and sugars.
Could you expand on the question, though? I'm not sure what the question is.
Okay, the question is, how do we share the information about the whole almond and the value it has to the consumer in a environment knowing how much to eat, what the portion size is,
Okay.
and then our current delivery system is filled with sugars and salts,
Yeah.
and that offsets the value.
Okay, so let me try to answer your questions. And number one, and I mentioned it briefly earlier, and quality of food is no longer just calories. We have not done study with almonds, but we did with avocados. We have compared for a given individual to consume a burger patty alone versus burger patty add the whole avocado to it. 270 calories, most of our monounsaturated fat, like almonds. you would think the body would react negatively. And even just in one sitting, just one consumption, what we have seen is that adding the avocado not only did not increase the triglyceride, but decrease the inflammation coming along brought on by the burger patties. So the quality, it is very important, and not just by how much calories. Now, delivery system, and you mentioned how much should we have. If we're talking about in replacement, and then really how much you should take has become irrelevant. For example, if you are regularly taking pretzels, like the study we did, replace with almonds, even same calories, is a tremendous benefit. Okay, now, if I'm gonna say, I'm gonna have almonds in this meal with vegetables, I'm not gonna have my, 2 cups of pasta, that is even more drastic. So really depends on how you look at it. Another example would be, in the morning, instead of my OJs, I'm gonna have, a serving of almonds, 1.5 or 1 ounce of it, and the benefit is there as well. They're about the same calories. So that is what I'm talking about. And then you talk about sugar and salt. Sugar, I already, really suggested, replaces the carbohydrate. As to salt, only about 15% or 20% the most salt is coming from added salt. Most of the salt is coming from the food per se, particularly processed food. That is the hams, that's our sausages and pizzas and everything else. So with that have said, even almonds, you eat it raw, either just roasted, or sometimes add some salt, and that is already, if you replace of some chips, for example, the salt actually intake is significantly decreased. So it's all about relevant. It is not true you have any salt, you'll be in trouble. And here's another thing. I know we don't have time to get into it. The salt is not the less the better. We have clear evidence now. If you're limiting your salt less than 2 grams a day, unless you have disease, and you actually more likely to die, because salt, it is something you need to survive. Like everything else, you cannot have excess. I hope that addressed some of your questions.
Thank you. Salted on.
Great. Well, I'd like to give a round of applause to Dr. Sivamani, Dr. Lee, and Luanne Williams, and thank them so much for being here today and educating us through conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.